In the forgotten valley of Mistwood, where ancient magic still whispers through the trees, a king had fallen from grace. Stripped of his crown and his powers, the Alpha King, Alaric, wandered as a common wayfarer, his true identity concealed beneath scars and simple clothes. 18 years ago, when he saved a little girl from the river's raging rapids, her innocent words changed everything. "When I grow up, I'm going to marry you," she promised, pressing a handmade bracelet into his palm. He had smiled sadly, knowing he would likely never return. 18 years passed. The kingdom trembled as signs of the prophecy emerged. The lost king would reclaim his throne when the twin moons aligned. The girl, now a healer with no memory of her savior's face, still wears a bracelet identical to the one she gave away. Will she remember her promise when she finally meets the king she unknowingly vowed to marry? The morning dew glistened on the leaves of her herbs as Lyra moved through her garden, her fingers tracing the familiar contours of the medicinal plants she had cultivated for years. At 23, she had become the most trusted healer in the village of Mistwood, following in her late grandmother's footsteps. "You have a visitor, Lyra," called Marin, her apprentice, a lanky 14-year-old with bright, perpetually curious eyes. Lyra nodded, tucking a sprig of lavender into her pocket before heading into her cottage. Inside, Elder Tom was waiting, his joints stiff with age, his face a road map of time and worry. "The usual tea for your joints?" she asked, already reaching for her mortar and pestle. "I thank you, child, but that is not why I have come." His voice lowered. "Strange things are stirring beyond our valley." Lyra ground willow bark with a pinch of meadowsweet. "What kind of strange things?" "The twin moons draw closer with each passing night. There are whispers in the other villages." He accepted the steaming cup she offered him. "Whispers of the prophecy." Lyra's hands stilled. "The prophecy?" Grandmother spoke of it in hushed tones. "Surely they are just old stories." "Perhaps," Elder Tom said, sipping his tea. "But travelers speak of unusual happenings. The royal court is restless." After he left, Lyra opened her journal, flipping past pressed herbs and detailed sketches to the pages where she recorded her dreams. It was always the same one: a raging river, the cold water filling her lungs, then strong arms lifting her to safety. A man's face, always blurred. Words she could not quite hear. Her fingers traced the bracelet she had worn since childhood, simple leather with carved wooden beads. She knew, somehow, that its twin existed somewhere in the world. Sometimes she would wake up clutching it, as if it could lead her to something, or someone, important. That evening, the village square buzzed with rumors. Lyra listened as she dispensed winter cough remedies and fever balms. "They say Lord Drevak has doubled the patrols on the borders," Gowan the blacksmith whispered. "The capital is preparing for something," his wife added. "My cousin works in the palace kitchens. Says the Lord barely sleeps, consulting with mages and seers." The talk died down as Lyra approached. "Has anyone mentioned the prophecy specifically?" Elder Tom narrowed his eyes. "Why do you ask, child?" She fiddled with her bracelet, a nervous, unconscious habit. "I am merely curious about the rumors." Later, alone in her cottage, Lyra watched the night sky from her window. The twin moons were closer than she had ever seen them, casting an unusual silver-blue light. Something stirred in her memory. Her grandmother, pointing to these same moons. When they align, Lyra, everything changes. Remember that. She picked up her journal, opening it to a page her grandmother had tucked inside. A crude map, showing ley lines of magic converging precisely on their village. She had always wondered why her remedies seemed more potent than others, why the plants responded to her touch as if they were alive. That night, her dream shifted. The river was the same. The strong arms lifting her were identical, but this time she heard the words clearly. "You are safe now, little one." And she saw her own small hands press something into the man's palm, her bracelet, and then heard her own childlike voice. "When I grow up, I'm going to marry you." Lyra awoke with a gasp, her heart pounding. The dream felt more like a memory. With trembling hands, she lit a candle and wrote everything down before it could fade. At dawn, a messenger from the village council arrived. Elder Tom requested her presence immediately. Something about strange plants growing in the forbidden forest. Plants that shouldn't exist in their climate. Gathering her satchel, Lyra felt an unshakable certainty that her life was about to change. The twin moons were nearly aligned. Her fingers found her bracelet again, tracing its familiar pattern as she stepped out into the morning light, unaware that miles away, a man was traveling toward Mistwood, wearing its twin. The mountain path narrowed as Alaric climbed higher, his weathered traveler's cloak whipping in the wind. 18 years of exile had hardened him. The once pampered royal was now at home in the wilderness. Beneath his simple robes, a pendant rested against his chest, the royal sigil of the Alpha King, his last link to his former life. He paused at a summit overlooking the Mistwood Valley. Down there, somewhere, were the answers he sought, and the fulfillment of a prophecy many had died to protect. The twin moons hung in the afternoon sky, unusually visible, drawing closer with each passing night. "Not much time left," he murmured, his fingers absently tracing the leather bracelet on his wrist. A gift from a child, one he had kept all these years without fully understanding why. A twig snapped behind him. In one fluid motion, Alaric drew his sword and spun around. "Still as quick as ever, my king," a familiar voice said. Alaric lowered his blade. "Rowan, few men can sneak up on me." The older man stepped from the shadows, his ranger's garb blending with the forest. His once dark hair was now streaked with gray, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "When word reached me that someone of your description was heading for Mistwood, I had to see for myself." Rowan clasped Alaric's arm in greeting. "So, the rumors are true. The Alpha King has returned." "I am not a king yet," Alaric corrected, turning his gaze back to the valley. "I may never be again." Rowan joined him at the overlook. "The signs are undeniable. The twin moons will align in 3 days. The royal wolves are restless, and Drevak," his voice hardened, "is mobilizing his forces. He senses a change is coming." Memories flooded Alaric. His father's assassination, the false accusations, the banishment ritual where his alpha powers were bound, leaving him a shadow of his former strength. His hand instinctively went to the pendant hidden beneath his shirt. "Tell me of Drevak's rule." Rowan's expression darkened. "He bleeds the kingdom dry while claiming to protect it. The people suffer, the land withers, and those with old magic are hunted. Only here in Mistwood, where the ley lines run deep, is some of the old power preserved. The few who are loyal remain in plain sight. Many more, like me, wait in the shadows." Rowan hesitated. There is one more thing. The girl. Alaric's eyes narrowed. What girl? The one from the prophecy. When the exiled king returns, his fate shall be bound to the one who made the innocent vow. Rowan studied his face. Do you remember her? Alaric's fingers found the bracelet again. A flash of memory. A small child pulled from churning water, wide eyes full of gratitude, tiny hands pressing a token into his palm. I have saved many in my years of wandering. This one was special, Rowan said, his voice low. She is in Mistwood now, a healer of unusual gifts. The village has protected her, though most do not know why. The wind shifted, carrying a scent that was all too familiar. Alaric stiffened. Drevak's scouts. 2, maybe 3. So you haven't lost your senses, Rowan said, knocking an arrow to his bow. What is your plan? Alaric looked at the distant village, then at the encroaching moons. The prophecy speaks of restoration when the moons align. I must reach Mistwood by then. It's not so simple. The ritual requires 3 elements. You, the girl, and your wolf. Benri has been missing for years. Missing? Rowan raised an eyebrow. There have been sightings of a great white wolf in the forests around Mistwood, one far too intelligent to be a common animal. Hope kindled in Alaric's chest. His royal familiar, separated from him during his banishment, might still be alive. We leave at nightfall, Alaric decided. But first, tell me everything about this healer. As Rowan spoke of the young woman with mysterious powers and a bracelet that matched his own, something stirred in Alaric. A long-forgotten feeling. Destiny, perhaps. Or something far more human. The royal pendant seemed to grow warm against his skin as the twin moons crept closer in the sky above. Torchlight flickered across worried faces as the Mistwood Council gathered in the village hall. Outside, an unseasonable wind howled through the trees. 3 hunting parties have returned empty-handed, Gowan the blacksmith announced, his voice grave. The animals are fleeing, as if they've been warned of danger. Elder Tom nodded slowly, unrolling an ancient scroll across the worn table. It was a time-yellowed map, its surface etched with intricate lines that converged on a single point, precisely where their village stood. The animals sense what is coming. The ley lines are waking beneath our feet. Lyra studied the map, recognizing it from her grandmother's teachings. The currents of magic are converging here. They have always been here, child. It is why our remedies are potent, our harvests bountiful when others wither. Elder Tom traced the lines with a gnarled finger. But now they stir with purpose. The twin moons are calling to them. Marin, standing beside Lyra, whispered, "Is it true? About the Alpha King?" The room fell silent. To even mention the exiled ruler was a risk. "It is more than old tales," said Hadley, the miller. "Royal messengers are questioning travelers on the main road. Lord Dravak's men are searching villages along the border." Elder Tom's eyes found Lyra's. "Tell them what you saw in the forest, child." All eyes turned to her. Lyra straightened, suddenly conscious of the weight of her bracelet on her wrist. "The ghost blossoms are blooming," she said, her voice clear. "They are not meant to bloom until the winter solstice, yet they are glowing even now. And the river," she hesitated. "It runs clearer than I have ever seen it, as if purified." Murmurs rippled through the room. Ghost blossoms blooming out of season were a powerful omen. There is more, Elder Tom said. The stories speak of signs before the prophecy is fulfilled. Unnatural skylights, animals behaving strangely. He looked meaningfully at Lyra, and heightened powers in those with the old blood. Lyra felt her cheeks grow warm. Just yesterday, she had healed Farmer Josh's prize mare when all thought she was beyond saving. For a moment, her hands had seemed to glow with a faint light. She had dismissed it as a trick of the sun. "What does this mean for Mistwood?" a voice asked from the back. Elder Tom carefully rolled up the map. "It means we must be prepared. The prophecy speaks of restoration, but change never comes without a cost." He turned to Lyra. "We need the rare herbs from the eastern woods, the ones your grandmother used for wards of protection. From the forbidden forest." Marin's eyes went wide. "But the wolves—" "That forest holds ancient magic," Elder Tom said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Lyra knows the paths. She must go, and she must go alone." As the meeting dispersed, Lyra stayed behind, studying the map one last time. Her finger traced the ley line that ran from the forest, through the center of the village, and directly beneath her own cottage. Outside, she stood in the village square, gazing up at the twin moons, which hung impossibly close in the night sky. For a moment, they seemed to pulse with an inner light, calling to a part of her she was only just beginning to understand. "You felt it too, didn't you?" Elder Tom had followed her. "The quickening in your blood." Lyra nodded slowly. "My grandmother spoke of our family's bond to this land," she said, her voice soft. "My mother had the gift before she vanished. There are things I haven't told you." The elder's gaze was heavy with secrets he now seemed ready to share. Things about her lineage, about why Lord Dravic's men would take a particular interest in her. "They must know I exist. Because I can heal? Because of who you can restore." He pressed something into her palm. It was a small vial filled with a luminescent liquid. "If you face any danger in the woods, break this. It will hide you from hostile eyes." "You're scaring me, Elder." "Knowledge is a shield, child. Gather your herbs tomorrow, but be back before sunset." His eyes flickered toward the moon. "Something is coming to Mistwood. Something that has been absent for 18 years. That night, lights danced above the village. Ribbons of blue and silver wove between the stars. Lyra watched from her window, her dream journal open beside her. She sketched the aurora, then turned to a blank page and drew something new. A white wolf with intelligent eyes, calling to her from the depths of the forest. Morning would come far too soon. Dawn painted the forbidden forest in misty hues as Lyra stepped beneath its ancient canopy. Her gathering basket swung from one arm, a small knife tucked into her belt. The birdsong fell silent the deeper she ventured, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. "Grandmother always said to announce yourself," she murmured, touching the trunk of a massive oak. "I come only to take what is freely given." The air around her seemed to lighten. Lyra followed a nearly invisible path, recognizing landmarks from her grandmother's teachings. A cracked boulder shaped like a wolf's head, a stream that ran uphill for several paces before resuming its natural course. The herb she sought, ghost leaf, grew only in places where magic was potent, often near the exposed roots of the oldest trees. Her grandmother had named it for its ghostly blue-white color and its tendency to look translucent in certain light. A flicker of movement caught her eye. a patch of undergrowth stirring with no breeze. Lyra approached cautiously, then gasped. The plants were reacting to her. Leaves turned toward her like faces seeking the sun. Impossible, she whispered, reaching out a hand. The moment her fingers brushed a fern, it unfurled completely, revealing spores that pulsed with a faint blue light. Nearby, dormant buds burst into bloom, releasing a sweet, heady perfume. Lyra knelt, watching in awe as a circle of green life awakened around her. And in the center, sprouting from the rich soil, was the ghost leaf, not the sparse stalks she'd expected, but a lush, vibrant cluster. As she carefully harvested what she needed, a memory surfaced. Playing by the river as a child, her mother's face always a blur in her recollection, calling her back from the water's edge. Later, her small body being swept away by an unexpected current. The shock of the cold, the certainty of drowning, and then strong arms lifting her to safety. The bracelet on her wrist grew warm. Lyra glanced down, startled to see it glowing faintly, the carved wooden beads lit from within. A twig snapped nearby. Lyra froze, the sudden feeling of being watched prickling her skin. "Who's there?" she called out, rising slowly. Only the sounds of the forest answered. She grabbed her basket, a sudden urgency to return to the village seizing her. As she turned to leave, a low growl stopped her. Between two ancient trees stood an enormous white wolf, its fur silvered by the dappled sunlight. Blood matted the fur along its flank, yet it stood proud, its eyes fixed on her with an unnatural intelligence. Fear seized her, then strangely receded. This was the wolf from her dream. "You're hurt," she said, her voice a soft breath. The wolf's ears twitched forward at her voice. It took a wavering step, then collapsed onto its side, its breathing ragged. Instinct overrode caution. Lyra moved toward the wounded creature, speaking in a gentle, soothing tone. "I won't harm you. I'm a healer." The wolf watched her approach, making no move to flee or attack. As Lyra knelt beside it, she noticed an unusual collar half hidden in the thick ruff of its neck. It was not leather or metal, but woven silver etched with strange inscriptions. The wound was deep, a puncture that suggested a recently removed spear or arrow. Lyra placed her hands near the injury. "I won't touch you. This might feel strange," she warned. Taking a deep breath, she focused as her grandmother had taught her, visualizing health replacing damage. A warmth spread from her core to her fingertips, which began to glow with the same blue light as the forest plants. The wolf whimpered once, then lay still as Lyra's healing energy flowed into its body. Beneath her hands, muscle and tissue knit back together at an impossible speed. The wound closed until only a faint scar remained. Exhausted, Lyra sat back on her heels. The wolf rose cautiously, testing its healed side. It then stepped closer and nuzzled her hand, its nose brushing against her bracelet. For an instant, Lyra's vision blurred. She saw flashes of a great stone castle, heard words whispered in an ancient tongue, felt the weight of a crown. The wolf pulled back, its eyes meeting hers with a startling, human-like awareness. "You're no ordinary wolf," Lyra whispered. In response, the creature turned, took a few steps into the trees, and looked back expectantly. Lyra hesitated, glancing from the path to the village to her basket of herbs. Elder Tom had warned her to be back before sunset, but the wolf clearly wanted her to follow. The twin moons, now visible even in the daylight, seemed to pulse above the forest canopy. Clutching her basket tighter, Lyra made her choice. Lord Dravic's knuckles turned white as he gripped the royal seal, a silver disc bearing the twin moons and the wolf sigil of the true king. For 18 years he had ruled from the shadows, a regent in name but a tyrant in practice. Now, prophecy threatened everything. "The signs are unmistakable," said Magister Voss, the court astronomer, unrolling star charts across the marble table. "The twin moons will reach perfect alignment in 3 days." Dravic's council chamber, high in the castle's west tower, offered a clear view of those cursed moons, which drew closer each night, mocking his precautions. "Signs and portents," Dravic scoffed, though his eyes betrayed his unease. "Peasant superstitions," offered General Kane, commander of the Royal Guard. "The people speak openly of the Alpha King's return. Loyalty to your regency wavers." "Then cut out their tongues!" Dravic roared, hurling the royal seal across the room. "For 18 years, I have kept this kingdom from ruin. 18 years while that wolf-blooded usurper wandered in exile." The council members exchanged wary glances. Dravic's temper had grown fouler with each passing day. Lady Osolde, the court's blind seer, spoke softly. "The prophecy cannot be unmade, my lord. When the twin moons align and the exiled king returns, his power will be restored through the one who made the innocent vow." "Then we find this woman and eliminate her," Dravic snarled. "Every piece of the prophecy must be prevented." General Kane cleared his throat. "We have received reports, my lord. A man matching the exiled king's description was seen near the border 3 days ago, traveling toward the Mistwood Valley." Dravic went still. "Mistwood, where the ley lines converge." "There is more," Lady Osolde added. "Our agents report unusual magic manifesting there. Plants blooming out of season. Miracles of healing attributed to a young woman." "The innocent vow," Dravic muttered. "Could it be her?" From the shadows in the corner, Riven, Dravic's master assassin, emerged. Few knew of his existence, and fewer still had seen his face, perpetually half hidden by a black leather mask. "Give me a name," Riven said, in a voice like stone grinding on stone, "and I will ensure she fulfills no prophecy." Dravic considered it, then shook his head. "Too public. The people already whisper of the Alpha King's return. A mysterious death would only fuel the rumors." He turned to General Kane. "Take your best men to Mistwood. Find this healer and bring her to me alive. If Alaric has returned, he will show himself to protect her." "And if we find the exiled king?" the general asked. A cruel smile twisted Dravic's features. "His powers remain bound by the banishment ritual. Without completing the prophecy, he is just a man. Kill him on sight." As the council dispersed, Lady Osolde remained, her sightless eyes seeming to fix on Dravic. "You fear something else, my lord. Something you have not shared." Dravic gritted his teeth. "Your vision sees too much, my lady. It is not vision, but understanding." She moved closer with an unnerving precision for one without sight. "You fear the wolf." Unconsciously, Dravic touched the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. 3 parallel lines, the mark of royal claws. "Fenry vanished years ago." Lady Osolde smiled enigmatically. "An Alpha King's familiar does not die so easily. Their bond transcends physical distance." "Enough!" Dravic's voice echoed off the stone walls. "Leave me!" He unlocked a hidden compartment in the floor and withdrew a small chest. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a yellowed scroll bearing the royal seal, the full text of the prophecy, parts of which he had hidden even from his closest advisors. When the exiled Alpha reclaims his throne, the usurper's blood shall pay the debt of treason. As foretold by the first pack, so shall it be under the aligned moons. Dravic's hand trembled as he reread the words. 18 years ago, he had orchestrated the old king's death, framed the prince for patricide, and performed the banishment ritual, all while convincing the realm he acted as a loyal regent. But prophecies held power in this land. The magic that bound the royal line to the kingdom itself demanded balance. If Alaric returned, if he found the girl from the prophecy, if the restoration ritual occurred under the aligned moons. Dravic's gaze returned to the celestial bodies hanging in the twilight sky, now nearly touching. He summoned his personal guard. "Prepare my armor and sword," he commanded. "I ride for Mistwood at first light." Prophecy or not, he would not lose everything to an exiled king and a village girl. If the stars themselves aligned against him, he would tear them from the sky before he gave up his throne. In the courtyard below, soldiers began to muster, torchlight gleaming on polished armor that bore Dravic's personal sigil, a broken crown beneath a dark moon. 3 days until the alignment. 3 days to find the girl. 3 days to unmake fate itself. Twilight settled over Lyra's cabin as she tended to the white wolf. The creature lay on the hearthrug, watching her every move with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. "You should be dead from a wound like that," Lyra murmured, cleaning the dried blood from its fur. "What kind of wolf are you?" The wolf's only reply was to rest its massive head on her knee. Lyra smiled in spite of herself. There was a familiarity to the animal, as if they had known each other in another life. Examining the collar more closely, she found intricate engravings partially hidden beneath the matted fur, ancient, interlocking symbols, and what looked like a name. As her fingers traced the inscription, the letters glowed faintly. Vindra. Then they faded again. "Vindra," she whispered, and the wolf's ears perked up. It rose to its feet, suddenly alert. A sharp knock on the door made them both jump. The wolf growled low in its chest, melting back into the shadows. "Lyra?" Elder Tom's voice called through the wood. "Are you all right, child? You did not return by sunset." She quickly threw a blanket over the wolf. "Just a moment." Cracking the door open just enough to see, Lyra found not only Elder Tom, but half the village council standing outside. "We feared something had befallen you in the forest," Marin said, her voice laced with concern as she peered over Lyra's shoulder. "Did you find the ghost leaf?" "I did. It's drying now." Lyra held her ground, blocking the doorway. "But I'm exhausted." Elder Tom's eyes narrowed. "You're hiding something." Before Lyra could form a reply, a low growl rumbled from within the hut. The elders exchanged alarmed glances. "Stand aside, child," Elder Tom commanded. Reluctantly, Lyra allowed them to enter. The wolf had retreated to the darkest corner, but its white coat seemed to glow even in the gloom. Gasps filled the small room. Joss the farmer reached for the hunting knife at his belt. "Don't," Lyra said, stepping between them and the wolf. "He's injured. I'm healing him." "That is no ordinary wolf," Elder Tom breathed, his voice hushed with dawning recognition. "Look at the markings on its brow. The royal crest." Indeed, now that its fur was cleaner, Lyra could see a distinct pattern of white and silver fur, forming what looked like a small crown between the wolf's eyes. It cannot be, Gawain whispered. The royal familiar was lost when the Alpha King was exiled. Bound to the royal bloodline since the kingdom's founding, Elder Tom finished. The wolf's eyes locked with the elders, a silent understanding passing between them. If the royal wolf has returned, Marin gasped, then the prophecy— Silence! Elder Tom cut her off. The walls have ears, even in Mistwood. That's why the plants responded to me in the forest. Lyra's mind raced. My healing powers, they're strengthening. The prophecy is unfolding, and I am somehow a part of it. Elder Tom took her hands in his. Your grandmother kept many secrets to protect you. Your bloodline is tied to the ancient guardians who once tended the magical borders of this realm. The same guardians who helped forge the Royal Pack's bond with the first Alpha King. My dreams, Lyra said suddenly. The river. The man who saved me. A crash from outside cut her off. Shouts echoed through the village, followed by the unmistakable clang of men in armor. Elder Tom moved swiftly to the window. Royal Guards, he hissed. The wolf, Fenra, pressed protectively against Lyra's side. They're searching the huts, Gawain reported, peeking through a crack in the shutters. Searching for something, or someone. Elder Tom turned to Lyra, his expression grave. They are looking for you. Me? But why? The prophecy speaks of one who made an innocent vow, one who holds the key to restoring the Alpha King's power. The elder glanced meaningfully at her bracelet. What do you remember of the day you nearly drowned? Lyra closed her eyes, grasping at the fragmented memory. I was 7, playing too close to the river during the spring floods. I fell in. Her voice wavered. A traveler saved me. I gave him my bracelet, a mate to this one. I promised. She trailed off, her eyes flying wide. What did you promise him, child? The warmth of a blush crept up Lyra's neck. I told him that when I was grown, I would marry him. Comprehension dawned on the elder's weathered face. An innocent vow, made to a man in exile. The wolf's head snapped toward the door seconds before a heavy fist hammered against it. By order of Lord Regent Dravik, open this door! Elder Tom moved quickly, ushering the others toward the back of the hut. You must flee with Fenra. Now, use the root cellar passage behind your stores. It leads to the sacred grove. I will delay them. I don't understand any of this, Lyra protested. You will, soon. Elder Tom pressed a small leather pouch into her hand. Your grandmother prepared for this day. Everything you need to know is in here. Fenra growled with urgency, nudging her toward the back room as the pounding on the door grew louder. Go, Elder Tom commanded. The fate of the kingdom depends on it. With one last, desperate look at her home, Lyra fled into the darkness, the royal wolf at her side. Alaric knelt by the riverbank, his palm closing around a smooth stone worn by decades of flowing water. He remembered this place, vividly. 18 years ago, a child's cry drawn him here. Without a thought for his own safety, he had plunged into the raging spring current to save a drowning girl. We're close, he said to Rowan, slipping the riverstone into his pocket. The village is just over that rise. The night had bled into true darkness, the twin moons casting an eerie, silver-blue light over everything. 3 hunters had passed them earlier, speaking of strange happenings and royal guards on the main road. We are not alone in this forest, Rowan warned, scanning their surroundings. Dravik would have scouts watching all approaches. Alaric nodded, his own senses on high alert for any sign of his missing familiar. Fenra is near. I can feel him. For years, the bond between Alpha King and Royal Wolf had been stretched thin by distance and suppressing magic, but it had never been broken. The last few days had brought flashes of connection, pain, urgency, and most startlingly, the presence of another in their mental link. The healer, Alaric murmured, almost to himself. Her? Rowan asked. Fenra has already found her. A rare smile touched Alaric's lips. Always one step ahead, that wolf. They continued in silence, avoiding the well-trodden paths. Alaric's exile had taught him to move like a shadow in hostile territory. 18 years Fuasis of running, hiding, gathering strength and allies in secret, all leading back to this valley, where an innocent child had made a promise that now formed the cornerstone of prophecy. They reached the crest of a small hill, and the village of Mistwood came into view below. Alaric stopped short, his body tensing. Torches. Too many torches. His voice hardened. Royal guards. Armored men moved between the huts, torchlight glinting off their drawn weapons. Villagers were being herded into the central square, their faces frightened in the harsh light. They're looking for someone, Rowan observed. Her, Alaric corrected, his hand instinctively going to the matching bracelet at his wrist, its presence a constant reminder of his purpose. Then we circle around, Rowan suggested. Approach from the forest side. Alaric shook his head. There's no time. If they have her. The thought sparked an unexpected wave of protectiveness in him. This woman, still a stranger, yet bound to him by prophecy and a childhood promise, was in danger because of him. A commotion erupted in the village below. Shouts, the clash of steel, the splintering of a cottage door. Alaric's decision solidified instantly. I'm going down. Find another way in and locate the healer's cottage. If she has fled, learn where she went. Rowan grabbed his arm. You can't reveal yourself yet. Not without your full power. I remember how to fight. Alaric cut him off, drawing his sword. Find Fenra and the girl. I'll create a diversion. Before Rowan could protest further, Alaric was moving down the slope, keeping to the shadows. Near the edge of the settlement, 2 guards stood watch at the tree line. With practiced skill, Alaric moved in behind them, rendering both men unconscious before they could raise an alarm. Donning one of the guards' cloaks, he entered the village proper, the hood pulled low to hide his features. 18 years had changed him. Once a pampered prince, now a man hardened by survival, but someone might still recognize the eyes of the exiled king. He made his way toward the central square, where a white-haired elder was being roughly questioned by a captain of the royal guard. The healer treats patients all over the region, the old man was saying. She could be anywhere. Lord Dravik does not accept could-bes, the captain replied coldly. If you value your village, you will produce her by dawn. Alaric's blood ran cold at the name Dravik. The man who murdered his father, framed him for the crime, and stole his kingdom, now hunted an innocent woman for her role in a prophecy. A hand landed on Alaric's shoulder. He spun, ready to strike, and froze. It was one of the village hunters, his eyes wide with recognition despite the hood. You, the man breathed. It is you, the mark on your forearm, the royal birthright. Alaric saw that his sleeve had ridden up, revealing the crescent-shaped birthmark of all royal heirs. He tensed, prepared to silence the man if he had to. Instead, the hunter dropped to one knee, his head bowed. "My king, she fled through the cellar passage with your wolf. Elder Tom sent her to the sacred grove." Relief and urgency warred within Alaric. "Rise, quickly," he commanded, pulling the man deeper into the shadows. "Tell no one you saw me. Where is this grove?" As the hunter gave hasty directions, Alaric felt a sharp tug in his mind. Fenra, calling to him through their bond. The wolf had found safety with the healer, but danger still stalked them. The twin moons climbed higher in the night sky. 2 days remained until their perfect alignment. Torchlight cast long, dancing shadows as Dravic's soldiers methodically searched every hut in Mistwood. Captain Thorn, a battle-hardened veteran with cold eyes and precise movements, oversaw the operation from the village square. "Sir," a lieutenant reported, saluting sharply. "No sign of the healer or the White Wolf." Captain Thorn's expression darkened. "Search again. Check for hidden rooms, secret cellars. No one sleeps until she is found." From the huddle of villagers kept under guard, Elder Tom watched with carefully concealed defiance. Decades of protecting Mistwood's secrets had prepared him for this day, though he had prayed it would come long after he was gone. "You're wasting your time," he called out to the captain. "She left yesterday to gather herbs in the North Mountains. She won't be back for days." Captain Thorn approached slowly, studying the old man. Curious how a simple village healer merits such protection. "What aren't you telling us, Elder? She is beloved here, our only healer. And yet, Lord Dravic believes she is something more." Thorn gestured, and 2 soldiers dragged a large, cloth-covered object forward. With a theatrical flourish, Thorn whipped the cloth away, revealing an ancient stone tablet, its surface covered in the same faded, swirling script as the royal seal. Elder Tom could not hide his gasp of shock. "Where did you get that?" "From the temple ruins near the capital. For years, scholars dismissed it as mere legend." Captain Thorn traced the script with a gloved finger. "The prophecy tablet. It foretells the return of the Alpha King through the one who made the innocent vow when the twin moons align. Lord Dravic has spent 18 years ensuring that prophecy remains unfulfilled." Murmurs rippled through the assembled villagers. The prophecy, spoken only in hushed whispers for generations, was now laid bare before them. "The alignment is nearly upon us," the captain continued, gesturing to the twin moons in the sky. "An interesting time for your healer to suddenly depart. Wouldn't you agree?" Elder Tom remained silent, but his eyes betrayed his fear. One of the soldiers emerged from Lyra's hut, holding her dream journal. "Captain, you need to see this." Thorn flipped through the pages, his gaze locking on Lyra's sketches of her recurring dreams. The rescue at the river, the faceless man, the matching bracelet. His expression shifted from skepticism to grim certainty. "It's her," he announced. "The woman from the prophecy." He turned on Elder Tom. "Where is she hiding?" When the elder didn't answer, Thorn backhanded him, sending him stumbling. "Every moment you delay will cost your village dearly." A commotion broke out at the edge of the square as 2 guards dragged a struggling figure forward. "Lyra's apprentice, Marin, caught trying to flee. We found him sneaking toward the eastern forest path," a guard reported. Captain Thorn smiled, a cold, predatory thing. "Perhaps you'll be more talkative than your elder." He drew a dagger, pressing the flat of the blade beneath Marin's chin. "Where has your mistress gone?" I don't know," Marin stammered, her eyes wide with terror. The sacred grove! A voice shouted from the crowd. It was the farmer, Joss, his face pale with fear. She spoke of gathering moon blossoms there. Elder Tom shot him a look of betrayal, but the damage was done. Captain Thorne released Marin with a satisfied smile. The sacred grove, of course. He turned to his lieutenant. Gather 20 men. We leave at once. The grove is protected, Elder Tom warned, desperation in his voice. Ancient magic guards those grounds. Your men will not return if you defile it with violence. Senseless superstition, Thorne scoffed, though several of his soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Secure these villages. If we are not back by dawn with the girl, burn everything. As the soldiers prepared to leave, a strange calm settled over Elder Tom. He reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around a small stone talisman, his last link to the old magic. You have read the prophecy tablet, he said quietly to Captain Thorne. But not all of it. The final lines were erased centuries ago. Thorne paused. What final lines? Those who oppose the rightful king shall fall to unseen forces. The guardian and the wolf will unite under the twin moons, and what was broken shall be restored. More legends and fairy tales, the captain jeered, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Elder Tom smiled cryptically. Why else would Lord Dravik fear a simple village girl? He knows what you do not, that prophecies in this land carry the weight of inevitable truth. Captain Thorne's hand moved unconsciously to the hilt of his sword. We make our own destiny, old man. As the soldiers marched out of the village, following the path toward the sacred grove, Elder Tom closed his eyes in silent prayer. The pieces were now in motion. The exiled king, the guardian healer, and the royal wolf, all converging as foretold. The twin moons crept slowly toward their perfect alignment in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to point the way toward fate. The first light of dawn filtered through the ancient trees as Lyra emerged from the underground passage into the sacred grove. Fenry padded silently beside her, his white fur luminous in the morning glow. The grove was a place untouched by time, a perfect circle of towering oaks surrounding a small clearing where a crystal spring bubbled from moss-covered stones. Lyra had visited this place with her grandmother many times, learning the old ways, but she had never felt it so charged with energy. The very air seemed to shimmer with anticipation. What now? She whispered to the wolf, who had taken to his task of protecting her as if born to it. Fenry's response was to approach the spring, drink deeply, and then look back at her expectantly. Lyra knelt beside him, placing her hands in the cool water. As she drank, a sense of warmth spread through her body, clearing her mind of fear and confusion. The leather pouch Elder Tom had given her felt heavy at her waist. Inside, she found a small key, dried herbs she didn't recognize, and a folded parchment sealed with her grandmother's wax sigil, a crescent moon embracing a small flame. Before she could break the seal, the sound of rustling leaves at the edge of the woods put Fenry on high alert, his ears pricked forward, muscles tense. Lyra froze, remembering Elder Tom's warning about Dravik's men. Instead of soldiers, however, a wounded man stumbled into the clearing. He wore no royal colors, just the simple blood-stained clothes of a traveler. He clutched his side where a crude bandage was rapidly soaking through. Her healer's instincts overrode her caution. Lyra rushed forward as the stranger fell to his knees. You're hurt. Not as bad as it looks, he managed, his voice strained. I was set upon on the road. Bandits, I think. As Lyra reached him, Fenrir's demeanor changed completely. The wolf bounded forward with a joyful whine, circling the wounded man, pressing against him with unmistakable recognition. The stranger's eyes widened. Fenrir, after all these years. Lyra stepped back, suddenly wary. You know this wolf? We are old friends. The man's gaze shifted to her face, then to the bracelet on her wrist. Something flashed in his eyes. Recognition, awe, and something deeper Lyra couldn't name. Slowly, he rolled up his own sleeve, revealing an identical bracelet of simple leather and carved wooden beads, worn with age. Lyra caught her breath. It can't be you, he said softly. 18 years ago, you were drowning. The memories crystallized in Lyra's mind. The rushing water, the strong arms that lifted her to safety, her own childish promise. You're the traveler who saved me. I was passing through the valley and heard your cry. His eyes never left hers as he reached into his shirt, wincing with the movement, and pulled out a pendant, the royal crest of the Alpha King. Understanding dawned on Lyra with stunning clarity. You are the exiled king. Alaric, he confirmed, though it has been many years since anyone has called me by my title. Fenrir settled between them, his great head swiveling from one to the other, as if satisfied by this reunion. Lyra noticed now the striking similarity in their eyes. Both man and wolf shared the same unusual amber color, flecked with gold that caught the light. The prophecy, Lyra whispered. The innocent vow. Alaric nodded. When you promised you would marry me someday. Heat rose in Lyra's cheeks. I was a child. I didn't understand. Neither did I at the time, he smiled. Lyra, destiny works in strange ways. A shout from beyond the grove interrupted them. The soldiers' voices were still distant, but closing in. Fenrir growled, the fur on his back bristling. Dravik's men, Alaric confirmed, rising with difficulty. They've been tracking me since I entered the valley. He held out a hand to her. We need to go now. Lyra hesitated, studying his face. This man was a stranger, yet somehow familiar in a way that transcended their brief childhood encounter. Everything was happening too fast. The prophecy, the wolf, the matching bracelet she had worn since childhood. How can I know I can trust you? Alaric's expression softened. You don't. But Fenrir trusts me. And you trust him, don't you? The wolf pressed against Lyra's side, as if to confirm the assessment. Her instincts warred with her caution, but the approaching voices left little time for debate. Where will we go? She asked, grabbing her grandmother's pouch. There are loyalists hidden in the northern caves. They have waited 18 years for the prophecy's fulfillment. Alaric held out his hand again. The choice is yours, Lyra. But know that whatever you decide, it will affect not just us, but the entire kingdom. The twin moons hung faintly visible even in the daylight, nearly touching. The alignment was 2 days away. With a final look at the sacred grove where she had learned her grandmother's healing arts, Lyra made her decision. Midnight draped the forest in shadows as Lyra and Alaric reached a small hunter's cabin, nestled among ancient pines. Fenrir had scouted ahead, ensuring the path remained clear of Dravik's patrols. We'll rest here, Alaric decided, checking his wound. The bleeding had slowed, but infection was a threat without proper care. Inside the derelict cabin was simple, dust-covered furniture, a table, a single chair, and a narrow bed. Lyra immediately set to work, gathering what she needed from her healer's bag. "Take off your shirt," she instructed, her professional tone masking her unease at the intimacy. "I need to clean the wound properly." Alaric complied without comment, revealing a torso scarred by hardship, evidence of 18 years in exile. Lyra focused on the fresh wound, a deep gash along his ribs. "Dravic's men?" she asked, cleaning the injury with herbs steeped in water. She warmed over the small fire Alaric had made. "An archer caught me crossing the eastern ridge." He winced as she applied pressure. "I was careless." "Lucky you found a healer." Her fingers worked with practiced efficiency, but her mind was racing with questions. "Why did you return now, after so many years?" "The prophecy demands it." Alaric watched her face intently. "And perhaps I grew tired of running." Fenry returned, settling by the door like a silent sentinel. The wolf's presence comforted Lyra, a connection to something ancient and reliable in this rapidly changing reality. As she finished bandaging Alaric's side, her gaze fell on a mark on his shoulder. 3 parallel scars, like claw marks. "Dravic did that," Alaric explained, noticing her interest. "The night he murdered my father and framed me for the crime. It was the final blow before he performed the banishment ritual." "The ritual that bound your powers," Lyra recalled from Elder Tom's stories. "The Alpha King's strength, his communion with the wolves, his control over the Earth's magic, all taken from him." "Not taken, bound." Alaric's eyes reflected the firelight. "The prophecy speaks of its restoration through the one who made the innocent vow. Through you, Lyra." She sat back, stunned by the implication. "I am just a village healer. My grandmother taught me herbs and remedies, not how to restore exiled kings." "Your grandmother knew more than she let on." Alaric nodded toward the leather pouch. "What else did she leave for you?" Lyra drew out the sealed parchment, breaking the wax with trembling fingers. Inside was a detailed recipe, not for any healing remedy she recognized, but something far more complex. At the top, in her grandmother's flowing script, were the words, "Herbs of memory, for when the time comes." "These ingredients," Lyra murmured, scanning the list. "Some are rare, but I have them. Ghost leaf, moon petal, wolf's heart." She looked up suddenly. "This isn't just for memories. These are ritual components. Your grandmother was preparing for this day." "She was one of the few who knew the full prophecy," Alaric confirmed. Lyra began to sort through her supplies, identifying each component. "This will brew a tea that reveals suppressed memories. But why would I need it? I remember the day you saved me. Perhaps not everything about that day, or about yourself." Alaric's voice softened. "The guardian lineage often only fully manifests when it is needed most." "Guardians?" Lyra paused her work. "Elder Tom mentioned your family was tied to the ancient guardians, the original protectors of the magical borders. They worked alongside the first Alpha King to establish the kingdom's foundations." Alaric watched her with renewed interest. "Their skills included healing, communion with nature, and sometimes prophetic dreams." Lyra's hands stilled. Her recurring dreams, of the rescue at the river, of the wolf in the forest. Had they been more than memories? Had they been a calling to this very destiny? Her mind made up. She prepared the special tea according to her grandmother's instructions. The herbs released an ethereal blue glow as they steeped, filling the cabin with a sweet, wild fragrance. "This is potent magic," she warned, pouring 2 cups. Are you certain? Our paths have crossed for a reason, Lyra. It is time we understood why. Alaric accepted his cup, their fingers brushing for a moment. They drank together as Fenry watched with intelligent eyes. The effect was immediate, a warmth spreading from Lyra's core, followed by a strange lightness in her mind. The walls of the cabin seemed to dissolve around them, replaced by a swirling mist that gradually sharpened into images. The river, 18 years ago. Lyra saw herself again as a child, playing near the dangerous spring meltwater. But now she saw what her childhood memory had forgotten. The royal pendant visible at the young traveler's neck as he pulled her from the current. The way her own small hands had glowed with a faint blue light as she touched him, easing the pain of a gash on his arm. "I healed you," she whispered, watching the scene unfold. Even then, Alaric nodded, lost in his own vision. "And I recognized something in you, something familiar. That's why I've kept the bracelet all these years." The scene shifted, revealing Lyra's grandmother speaking urgently to a young elder. "Hide her abilities. Protect her at all costs. When the time comes, she will be the key to restoring the balance." As the vision faded, Lyra met Alaric's gaze across the small table, and an understanding passed between them. She was no ordinary village healer, just as he was no ordinary exiled king. Outside, the twin moons crept ever closer to alignment. Dawn was breaking as Alaric and Lyra approached a steep cliff face with no apparent opening. Fenra led with confidence, stopping before a tangle of vines and moss that hid a narrow fissure in the rock. "Few know of this entrance," Alaric explained, pulling aside the greenery. "The Loyalists have hidden here since my exile." Lyra followed him into the darkness, a hand on Fenra's back for guidance. The passage gradually widened, sloping downward until they emerged into a vast, subterranean cavern, lit by phosphorescent crystals embedded in the walls. A dozen people stopped what they were doing as they entered. Men and women of varying ages, all armed, all staring in stunned silence. Then, an elderly woman stepped forward, her back straight despite her age. "The king has returned," she announced, her voice echoing, "and he has brought the guardian." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several knelt, while others approached cautiously, as if they feared Alaric might vanish. The old woman, introduced as Lady Alara, once the royal healer to Alaric's father, embraced him tightly. "We have waited 10 years, Your Majesty." "Rise, all of you," Alaric commanded gently. "I am not your king again. Not yet." Lady Alara turned to Lyra, a knowing look in her eyes. "You found her? The one from the prophecy?" Lyra shifted uncomfortably under the collective gaze. "I'm still not sure what my part in all this is." "Come." Alaric beckoned, leading them deeper into the network of caves. "There is much to explain, and little time." They entered a chamber dominated by a large stone table. Spread across its surface was an intricately detailed map of the kingdom, with colored markers indicating troop movements. Alaric studied it intently, his fingers tracing routes through mountain passes and forest paths. "Dravik's forces have doubled along the northern border," reported a gray-haired man introduced as Commander Garrick, former captain of the Royal Guard. "He fears your return." "With good reason," Alaric replied, his voice hardening. "How many loyalists remain in the capital?" 200, perhaps more," a younger man answered. "Waiting for your signal." Alaric nodded and unrolled another map from a hidden compartment beneath the table. This one showed a complex network of tunnels running beneath the kingdom. "The king's map," Lyra realized. schematics known only to the royal family. These passages were built by the first Alpha King, Alaric explained to Lyra. Some led directly into the castle. You plan to infiltrate the capital? Lyra surmised. Yes, but not yet. Alaric pointed to an astronomical chart. The prophecy is clear. My powers can only be restored when the moons align. Without the full strength of the Alpha King, facing Dravik would be suicide. Lady Alara approached Lyra, studying her with shrewd eyes. You do not yet understand your importance, child. The ritual requires both elements, the exiled king and the guardian who made the innocent vow. What ritual? Lyra asked. Instead of answering, the older woman led her to a smaller chamber where ancient texts were preserved in glass cases. Ancient magic requires balance. What was broken must be restored by the same elements. Dravik used blood magic to bind the Alpha King's powers. Only blood magic can undo it. Blood magic? Lyra recoiled. I am a healer. I preserve life. Not that kind, Lady Alara clarified. The voluntary offering of life force. Your healing energy, focused through the bond created by your childhood vow. Fenra, who had been exploring, suddenly returned, ears alert. Moments later, Commander Garrick rushed in. Scouts report movement in the eastern forests. Dravik's elite guard, led by the grim-faced Captain Thorn. Lord Dravik himself rides with them. Alaric gritted his teeth. Dravik wouldn't leave the capital unless he feared the prophecy was close to fulfillment. Lady Alara concluded, He's coming for the girl. All eyes turned to Lyra, who unconsciously touched her bracelet. How would he know about me? Dravik has spies everywhere, Alaric explained. And he has studied the prophecy as closely as we have. As if on cue, a young scout burst in. Your Majesty, soldiers have approached the southern entrance. They've found us. Commander Garrick drew his sword. We'll defend the passages. No, Alaric countered. Too many would die. We need another way. His eyes found Lyra's. The ritual. Can we perform it now? Lady Alara shook her head. The moons are not yet aligned. The magic would not hold. Fenra suddenly went rigid. Then, he transformed before their astonished eyes, his form blurring, stretching, until a man stood where the wolf had been. Tall and silver-haired, with the same amber eyes, he bore the royal markings on his forearms. The royal familiar, Lyra whispered. There is another way, Fenra said, his voice hoarse from disuse. The underground river leads to the sacred temples. The alignment will be visible there, and the ancient power is strongest at that nexus. Alaric gripped his companion's shoulder. Old friend, I was beginning to fear you'd forgotten your human form. Never, my king. Fenra smiled briefly, then grew serious again. But we must hurry. I can feel Dravik's hunters closing in. Lyra watched in amazement as loyal subjects scrambled to prepare supplies. Her simple life as a village healer felt a world away, replaced by prophecy and royal intrigue. Yet, something felt right about standing beside Alaric and Fenra, as if long-separated pieces were finally slotting into place. Are you ready? Alaric asked her softly. The twin moons hung ever closer in the sky. The perfect alignment was one day away. Cold water rushed around their waists as Lyra, Alaric, and Fenra navigated the subterranean river. Behind them, distant shouts echoed. Dravik's soldiers were storming the hideout. This way, Fenra urged in human form, though his wolf senses remained sharp. The current grows stronger ahead. We'll need to hold to the guide rope. A narrow stone ledge ran alongside the rushing water, barely wide enough for a single file. Alaric went first, one hand gripping the ancient rope embedded in the wall, the other held back for Lyra. "We are approaching the temple junction," he explained over the roar of the water. "The river splits there. One path leads to the sacred temples, the other to the castle dungeons." Lyra focused on each step, ignoring her soaked clothes and the chill that seeped into her bones. That morning, she had been a village healer. Now she was fleeing through secret passages with the exiled king and his shape-shifting companion. The passage widened into a circular chamber with 5 tunnel openings. In the center stood a stone pedestal bearing an ancient, leather-bound tome, so old the leather had hardened to the consistency of wood. "The ancestral tome," Fenra whispered reverently. "I never thought to see it again." Alaric approached cautiously. "My father spoke of this, the original record of the bloodlines, magical bonds, and prophecies. It was thought to be lost in the Great Fire. Not lost, protected." Fenra indicated markings on the floor, a perfect circle of symbols enclosing the pedestal. "Only those of the true bloodline can approach without consequence." Lyra felt drawn to the book, her healer's hands tingling with a strange energy. Without conscious thought, she stepped forward, crossing the circle. Instead of repelling her, the markings flared to life beneath her feet, casting a blue-white light upward. "The blood of the guardians," Fenra breathed. "The book recognizes you, Lyra." She placed her palm on the tome's cover. Instantly, the binding responded. Ancient clasps clicked open. The pages turned on their own, stopping on an illustration of a woman with her hands raised toward twin moons. Energy flowed between her and a kneeling king. Below the image, text described the very restoration ritual Lady Alara had mentioned. The ancient tongue shifted before Lyra's eyes, transforming into words she could understand. "The guardian line persists from daughter to daughter, keepers of balance and healing. When darkness covers the land, their power awakens to restore what was unjustly taken." Lyra's fingers traced her family tree on the opposite page. Generations of women led to her grandmother, her mother, and finally to her own name, written in shimmering script. "All this time," she murmured, "I thought I was simply skilled with herbs, but it was more than that. My dreams, my connection to the plants, my healing abilities. You are the last of the guardians," Fenra confirmed, "born for this moment." A distant rumble interrupted her discovery, the sound of pursuit, growing closer. Alaric quickly consulted the map section of the tome. "This passage," he said, pointing to the rightmost tunnel, "leads directly to the courtyard of the sacred temple." As they prepared to leave, Lyra hesitated, glancing back at the ancestral tome. "We can't leave it for Dravik," she decided, closing the book and lifting it from the pedestal. It felt almost weightless in her arms, humming with contained energy. "The book has chosen," Fenra nodded in approval. They hurried down the narrow tunnel, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. After what felt like hours, they emerged into the fading daylight. The sacred temple, a circular structure of white stone pillars open to the sky, stood in the center of a hidden valley. "The site of the royal consecration," Alaric explained, his voice thick with emotion, "where every Alpha King has been crowned since the kingdom's founding." Lyra placed the ancestral tome on a stone altar, where it settled as if coming home. Above, the twin moons hung tantalizingly close in the late afternoon sky. At midnight, they will be perfectly aligned, Fenra observed. We must prepare the ritual. As Alaric and Fenra gathered materials according to the tome's instructions, Lyra studied the ancient text. The pages revealed themselves to her touch, showing her aspects of the guardian's powers she had never imagined. Communion with nature, healing beyond physical wounds, and the manipulation of the earth's magical currents. One passage caught her eye. The guardian's greatest strength lies not in power, but in choice. That which is given freely holds a magic that can never be taken by force. Understanding dawned. Her childhood vow to marry the king wasn't just the innocent words of a grateful child. It represented the free giving of herself to his cause, a bond more powerful than any spell. The sound of approaching horses shattered the moment. Alaric and Fenra immediately took defensive stances. "Dravik!" Alaric snarled, drawing his sword. "He's found us!" Fenra began to shift back into his wolf form, bones cracking and reshaping. "I will delay them," he growled. "Finish the preparations." Before either of them could protest, he leaped toward the valley entrance. Lyra clutched the tome to her chest, her newfound heritage both a burden and a gift. Alaric's eyes reflected the sunset, his features hardening with resolve. "It's time," he said. "Now we fight for our kingdom." The sunset painted the sacred temple in hues of gold and crimson as Lyra and Alaric prepared. The valley's natural formation created a defensible position, with only one narrow entrance for Dravik's forces. "Fenra can't hold them off indefinitely," Alaric said, checking the temple's perimeter. "We need to complete as much of the ritual preparation as possible before they storm the valley." Following the instructions of the ancestral tome, Lyra arranged sacred herbs in a circular pattern around the central altar. Her fingers worked with a newfound confidence, as if guided by generations of guardians before her. "The alignment crystal," she said, looking up from the illustrations. "The ritual needs it to focus the energy of the moons." Alaric nodded, moving toward a sealed compartment beneath the altar. "My father showed me this place once, a long time ago." His fingers traced an imperceptible seam in the stone. "The royal vault, accessible only to those with alpha blood." As his hand pressed against the stone, ancient mechanisms engaged and the compartment slid open without a sound. It revealed a multifaceted crystal the size of a fist, pulsing with an inner light that brightened as it was exposed to the moons above. "It's already responding," Lyra observed, watching the crystal's glow intensify as Alaric placed it upon the altar. "The alignment draws near." Their eyes met across the gleaming stone, and something unspoken passed between them. Since fleeing the village together, they had found little time to acknowledge the growing connection that transcended prophecy and a childhood promise. "Perhaps, in another life," Alaric said, his voice low, "we might have met differently. A village healer and an exiled king." Lyra offered a soft smile. "Our paths would have crossed regardless. I would have found you." The certainty in her voice surprised them both. Some bonds exist long before we understand them. The crystal pulsed more brightly, as if responding to their connection. In its facets, Lyra glimpsed fragmented visions, herself in royal vestments, Alaric wearing the Alpha's crown, a peaceful kingdom restored to balance. A distant howl shattered the moment, Fenris's warning. Seconds later, the wolf leaped into the temple clearing. He was panting from exertion, his muzzle stained with blood that was not his own. "Dravik is coming," he growled, partially shifting into his human form. a disconcerting mix of wolf and man that revealed the depths of his exhaustion. With 20 of his elite guard, they've found the valley entrance. Alaric's expression hardened. How long? Minutes. No more. Fenris collapsed beside the altar, battle wounds stark against his hybrid form. I took out the advanced scouts, but the main force is right behind them. Lyra immediately knelt beside him, her hands hovering over his injuries. The healing energy came more easily now, flowing from her core through her fingertips in unseen streams of white-blue light. Fenris's wounds sealed under her touch, his breathing evening out. Your powers are stronger here, Alaric noted. The sacred ground amplifies a guardian's abilities. It's not just the ground, Fenris added, his voice regaining its strength. The approaching alignment. The barrier between worlds thins as the moons converge. Lyra helped him sit up, then turned back to the ancestral book. The final components of the ritual. We need royal blood, freely given, and a guardian's tears, freely shed, combined when the moons are perfectly aligned. My blood is ready, Alaric said, drawing a small dagger. But your tears. She met his gaze steadily. For my village in peril. For the 18 years of your exile. For the kingdom suffering under Dravic's rule. I have tears enough. The sound of approaching horses echoed through the valley. Alaric took a defensive stance, while Fenris, now recovered, shifted back into his full wolf form and melted into the shadows surrounding the temple. Whatever happens, Alaric told Lyra, complete the ritual when the moons align. If my powers are restored, I can end this tonight. And if we fail? She asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her since she learned her role in the prophecy. Then Dravic wins, and the kingdom remains in darkness. His hand briefly covered hers, but we will not fail. The prophecy has brought us this far. The first soldiers appeared at the valley's entrance, their armor glinting in the fading light. Behind them rode a figure in elaborate black regalia, his face partly hidden by a hood. Lord Dravic himself, come to stop the prophecy's fulfillment. Lyra's attention was drawn upward, to where the twin moons hung, mere inches from each other in the night sky. The alignment crystal vibrated with surging energy, responding to their convergence. It begins, she whispered. From the ancestral tome, a page turned on its own, revealing the final instructions for the restoration ritual. The last line stood out in shimmering script. What was promised in innocence must be affirmed in wisdom, for the Alpha's power to return. Understanding dawned. Her childhood promise, to marry the king when she grew up, had to be reaffirmed, not as a child's gratitude, but as a woman's choice. The crystal pulsed in time with her heartbeat as Dravic's forces advanced into the valley. Perfect alignment at midnight was still hours away, but the battle for the kingdom would be decided long before then. Alaric drew his sword, the blade reflecting the crystal's light. Stay behind me, he commanded. The ritual is all that matters now. As twilight deepened around them, Lyra clutched the ancestral tome to her chest and whispered a silent prayer to the generations of guardians who had come before her. Dravic's knights took positions over the sacred temple, his forces encircling the structure. Torchlight illuminated armored figures advancing with caution, wary of the ancient power that permeated the site. Alaric stood on the temple steps, sword drawn but not yet striking. Behind him, Lyra continued the ritual preparations, consulting the royal grimoire, an ancient text that had materialized from within the altar when the alignment crystal reached full luminescence. Surrender now, usurper, Lord Dravic shouted, dismounting from his black stallion. The regent's face bore the mark of Alaric's wolf, 3 parallel scars running from his temple to his jaw. Your prophecy dies tonight. The only usurper here is you, Dravik, Alaric answered, his voice echoing across the temple grounds. 18 years ago you murdered my father, framed me for his death, and stole my throne. Dravik smirked. And who is left to contest that story? Your supporters have been captured or killed. The kingdom accepts my rule. Not all of them, a voice called from the shadows. Elder Tom emerged from the tree line, accompanied by villagers from Mistwood and loyalists from hidden settlements. They formed a protective circle around the temple, simple weapons held in determined hands. The people remember their true king, the elder declared. Dravik's expression darkened. Then they can die with him. He motioned to his elite guard. Take the temple. Kill the traitors. Bring me the girl alive. As the soldiers charged, Fenris appeared on a rocky outcrop above, howling a signal that echoed through the valley. From the forest emerged wolves of all colors and sizes, the wild packs of the kingdom answering the royal family's call. The battle erupted into chaos. Villagers, loyalists, and wolves clashed with Dravik's trained soldiers. Alaric fought on the front lines, his years in exile evident in every precise movement. Without his alpha powers, he relied on hard-won combat skills, cutting through the first wave of guards with ruthless efficiency. Inside the temple, Lyra worked frantically, deciphering the royal grimoire's instructions. The ancient text held the complete ritual for restoring an alpha king's powers, a ceremony never before needed in the kingdom's history. The grimoire spoke of blood freely given and tears freely shed, but it also spoke of a soul bond, one made by choice, not fate. The childhood vow must be renewed, Fenris explained, his keen ears was tuned to the battle outside. Not as prophecy, but as a choice. Both Guardian and Alpha must choose each other freely, or the magic cannot take hold. The twin moons drew ever closer to perfect alignment, their combined light intensifying the crystal's glow until the entire temple shone like daylight. Lyra arranged herbs and symbols according to the grimoire's illustrations, her healer's hands steady despite the sounds of combat beyond the pillars. Outside, Alaric fought his way toward Dravik, cutting down royal guards with a singular focus. Years of exile and planning for this very moment fueled every strike. Behind him, the villagers and loyalists held their ground against superior numbers, their conviction giving strength to their unpracticed arms. Face me, Dravik, Alaric challenged, breaking through the line of guards. Or do you only fight through others? The regent drew his own sword, an ornate blade that had once belonged to Alaric's father. With pleasure, Wolfblood. This time I'll make sure you stay dead. Their swords met with a crash that echoed through the temple. Though Dravik wore the finer armor and wielded the royal blade, Alaric fought with the ferocity of one who had survived 18 years of hardship. Every exchange revealed the difference between them. One man who had taken power through betrayal, another who had earned his strength through adversity. Inside the temple, Lyra completed the ritual circle, as described in the grimoire. At its center was the alignment crystal, now hovering inches above the altar, spinning slowly as it absorbed the lunar energy. It is ready, she told Fenris. But Alaric is fighting for his life and for the kingdom, the wolf finished grimly. Lyra moved to the temple entrance, witnessing the battle below. Bodies were strewn across the grounds, both royal guards and loyalists. In the midst of the chaos, Alaric and Dravik remained locked in combat, neither gaining an advantage. Then, Dravik feigned a move that threw Alaric off balance. The usurper's blade slashed across Alaric's side, reopening the previous wound. Blood darkened his tunic as he staggered back. "No!" Lyra's cry echoed across the temple grounds. Without thinking, she ran down the stairs, heedless of Fenris's warning growl. Dravik saw her approach and smiled cruelly. The guardian reveals herself. He kicked Alaric aside and turned to Lyra. The final piece of the prophecy. "Stay back," Alaric warned, struggling to regain his footing. But Lyra kept moving forward, her healer's instincts overriding all caution. As she neared Alaric, Dravik lunged, not at her, but at the wounded king. Time seemed to slow. Lyra saw the blade descending toward Alaric's heart. Without hesitation, she threw herself in its path, her hands raised in a desperate defense. What happened next stunned everyone present. As Dravik's sword met Lyra's outstretched palms, a burst of white-blue energy erupted from her hands, stopping the blade in mid-strike. The Guardian's power, awakened by the immediate threat, had manifested as a shield of pure magic. Dravik stumbled backward, his sword smoking where it had contacted Lyra's power. Above, the twin moons touched at their edges, sending a combined beam of light directly into the alignment crystal within the temple. "Now!" Fenris's voice echoed in Lyra's mind. "The ritual must be completed now." With a strength she didn't know she possessed, Lyra helped Alaric to his feet and toward the temple steps. Behind them, Dravik recovered, signaling his remaining guards to follow. The alignment had begun. The fate of the kingdom hung in the balance. The light of the twin moons bathed the temple in an ethereal glow as Lyra helped Alaric across the threshold. Behind them, Dravik's remaining forces regrouped for a final assault. The alignment crystal pulsed in sync with the convergence above, casting prismatic patterns across the ancient stones. "We have minutes, at most," Fenris warned, shifting back to human form to help Alaric to the altar. Blood darkened the exiled king's side where Dravik's blade had struck. Lyra worked quickly, following the instructions of the royal grimoire. "The ritual requires our blood, freely given at the moment of perfect alignment." She arranged ceremonial herbs in precise patterns around the crystal, her fingers steady despite the chaos outside the temple walls. Elder Tom appeared at the entrance, his weathered face grave. "The Loyalists cannot hold them much longer. Dravik is bringing up reinforcements." "Then we end this now," Alaric said, straightening despite his wound. His eyes met Lyra's across the altar. "Are you certain? Once this is done, it cannot be undone." "Your life will be bound to mine," he murmured, his voice a low promise, "and to the kingdom itself." Lyra's reply was lost in a sudden commotion at the temple's rear entrance, a passage thought known only to those of royal blood. Commander Alaric stumbled through the archway, half carrying a wounded Lady Ola. Both bore the fresh wounds of a desperate battle. "Betrayed," the commander gasped, his strength failing. "The southern tunnel, it's been compromised." "How?" Alaric demanded, his hand flying to his sword's hilt. "Those passages are secret." Lady Ola's expression hardened, her voice laced with ice. "Someone revealed them to Dravik's forces." Before the weight of her words could settle, a dagger flew from the shadows, embedding itself deep in Commander Alaric's chest. He fell with a strangled cry, his lifeblood pooling on the sacred stones. From the darkness emerged a cloaked figure, Riven, Dravik's master assassin. In his hand, another blade gleamed, its surface etched with symbols that matched those on the dagger now buried in the commander's heart. "The ritual ends here," Riven announced, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Lord Dravik sends his regards." With a roar, Fenra launched himself at the assassin, his form shifting, blurring into the shape of a great wolf as he lunged. The two figures crashed against a stone column, locked in a mortal struggle. Alaric drew his own sword, moving to aid his companion, but Lyra seized his arm. "The alignment," she urged, pointing to the heavens where the twin moons were now on the verge of converging. "We have to finish the ritual, now." A deafening crash echoed through the temple as Dravic's soldiers breached the main entrance. Elder Tom and the remaining loyalists formed a desperate defensive line, buying them precious seconds. Lyra and Alaric turned back to the altar, where the crystal's light had intensified to a nearly blinding luminescence. Following the grimoire's instruction, she took the ceremonial dagger, sliced her palm, and let her blood drip onto the crystal's surface. Alaric did the same, their blood mingling upon the faceted stone. "With this blood, willingly shed," Lyra recited, her voice clear and strong, "I renew the vow made in childhood innocence, not by the demand of destiny, but by my own choice." "With this blood, willingly shed," Alaric echoed, his voice resonating with hers. "I accept the vow and make my own, not for power, but for the healing of the kingdom." The crystal drank in their combined blood, its clear heart turning a deep, vibrant crimson. Above, the twin moons touched, their edges merging in perfect alignment. A furious shout tore through the temple as Dravic himself shoved past his soldiers, his sword held high. "Stop them!" Too late. The moons completed their convergence, sending a beam of unified light lancing down into the crystal. The blood-soaked stone erupted in a blaze of glory, enveloping Lyra and Alaric in a column of raw energy. In that transformative moment, neither of them saw Riven break free from Fenra's grasp. The assassin staggered toward them, his bloodied dagger raised for one final strike. "For Lord Dravic!" he snarled, plunging the blade toward Lyra's unprotected back. Fenra howled a warning. Alaric spun, seeing the threat an instant too late to intercept it. But before the dagger could find its mark, Lady Ole threw herself into its path. The blade sank deep into the elderly healer's chest. "For the true king," she whispered, as she crumpled to the temple floor. The ritual's light flared violently, the crystal's energy surging toward its climax. But something had changed. The act of betrayal within the sacred circle had shattered the ceremony's delicate balance. "The magic is destabilizing," Fenra warned, finally pinning Riven to the ground. "The ritual is compromised." Tears streamed down Lyra's face as she watched the life fade from Lady Ola's eyes. "No, it cannot end like this." "The tears of the Guardian are freely shed," Alaric reminded her, pulling her focus back to the ritual. "The grimoire speaks of healing through sorrow, of balance restored through sacrifice." Understanding dawned. Lyra let her tears fall, letting them land upon the crystal beside their blood. The stone's erratic pulse steadied, its light purifying from angry red to a brilliant, clear luminescence. "The innocent vow renewed through choice," she whispered, completing the incantation. "The broken crown restored through sacrifice." The temple trembled as the twin moons reached their perfect zenith in the sky. The crystal's energy surged outward, bathing the entire structure in a blinding light. Dravic's soldiers fell back, shielding their eyes, while the usurper himself stood frozen in a mask of horror and rage. As the light peaked, Alaric pulled Lyra close, their foreheads touching within the column of power. The wound in his side knitted itself shut before her eyes, strength visibly flowing back into his form. Around his shoulders, a spectral mantle shimmered into existence, the power of the Alpha King, made manifest once more. "For the kingdom," he murmured against her tears. Then the light exploded, and the world dissolved into white. Consciousness returned to Lyra in slow, fractured pieces. Cold stone pressed against her cheek. Iron shackles bit into her wrists. The acrid scent of torch smoke filled her lungs. She was in the capital's throne room, a vast chamber of marble and gold, now corrupted by Dravic's dark influence. Black banners bearing the sigil of his broken crown hung from rafters once adorned with the royal wolf standard. "The healer awakens," came Dravic's voice, smooth as poisoned honey. Lyra struggled to her knees, fighting a wave of disorientation. Her last memory was of the temple, the ritual, the blinding light, and then nothing. "Where is Alaric?" she demanded. Dravic's laughter was devoid of humor. "Dead, perhaps. Chained, perhaps. It matters little now." He descended from the elevated throne, circling her like a predator. Upon his head sat a twisted parody of the royal crown, forged from black iron with sharp, thorn-like projections. It was designed to mock the simple silver circlet of the true Alpha King. "The prophecy has failed," he continued, satisfaction dripping from his tone. "The moons aligned, but I am still here. I still rule this kingdom." Lyra's eyes scanned the room, taking in the details. Royal guards posted at every exit, courtiers watching with carefully neutral expressions, and in the shadowed alcoves, chained figures. Elder Tom, Marin, and other villagers from Mistwood, hostages to ensure her cooperation. "What do you want from me?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. Dravic stopped before her, his scarred face illuminated by the flickering torchlight. "The Guardian's gift. My scholars have researched the ancient texts. While a Guardian's power is best given freely, it can be taken with the proper rituals." Revulsion coiled in Lyra's stomach. To corrupt the healing magic for personal gain violated everything her grandmother had taught her about the Guardian's sacred trust. "I would rather die," she stated flatly. "Perhaps," Dravic shrugged, "but your villagers will precede you one by one until you reconsider." He gestured to a guard, who roughly dragged Marin forward. The girl's face was bruised, her eyes wide with terror. Lyra strained against her chains. "Leave her alone. She's innocent." "No one is innocent," Dravic sneered, drawing a ceremonial dagger. "Now, shall we begin the demonstration?" Before he could approach Marin, a clamor erupted at the main entrance. The enormous doors burst open, revealing a royal messenger, his uniform torn and bloodied. "My lord," he gasped, "the west gate is under attack." Dravic's face darkened. "Impossible. The rebel forces were crushed at the temple." "It is not the rebels, my lord. It is wolves, hundreds of them, led by a great white beast." "And behind them?" The messenger hesitated. "The common folk have risen. They march with the wolves, crying out for the Alpha King." Rage twisted Dravic's features. "Mobilize the elite guard. Kill any who resist. Bring me the head of the white wolf." As the guards scrambled to obey, Lyra felt something stir within her. Hope, yes, but also a strange awareness of distant movements. She could feel the wolves converging on the castle, feel Fenra's presence leading the charge. And beyond that, another presence, a familiar consciousness, drawing ever closer. Alaric was alive. The ritual had not failed. It had been delayed. Dravic seemed to read something in her expression. "You know something," he accused, seizing her by the arm. "What happened in that temple?" Lyra met his gaze, her own filled with defiance. The true Alpha returns. The very land recognizes its rightful king. Fury contorted Dravic's face. He struck her, a backhanded blow hard enough to split her lip. There is no Alpha but me! Blood trickled down Lyra's chin, and where it dripped onto the floor, tiny blue flowers instantly bloomed between the marble tiles. The Guardian's blood, bringing life even here, in Dravic's corrupted throne room. The usurper staggered back, staring at the impossible blossoms. What sorcery is this? The old magic, Lyra answered, strength returning to her voice. The true power of the kingdom, which you tried to destroy. Outside, the howls of wolves echoed through the night, closer now, joined by the unmistakable sounds of a pitched battle. The twin moons, still in alignment, shone through the throne room's high windows, bathing Lyra in their combined light. Dravic regained his composure, drawing his sword. No prophecy, no ritual, no peasant uprising will take my throne. When your precious Alpha King arrives, he will find your head on a spike. A deep rumbling interrupted his threat, not from outside, but from beneath. The marble floor trembled, hairline cracks spreading outward from where Lyra's blood had fallen. The entire castle seemed to shudder in response. What is happening? A courtier cried, his voice edged with panic. The ley lines, Elder Tom shouted from his chains. They have awakened beneath the castle. Dravic's eyes widened with the first true hint of fear. Guard the prisoner, he ordered, striding toward a side entrance. I will deal with the wolves myself. As he reached the door, a massive white form burst through it. Fenra, in his full wolf form, teeth bared in a savage snarl. The guards scattered before him as he took a protective stance in front of Lyra. Impossible, Dravic breathed, raising his sword. You died with your master 18 years ago. The reports of our demise were greatly exaggerated, a voice said from the main entrance. Alaric stood framed in the massive doorway. He was no longer the weary exile, but someone transformed. His eyes blazed with an amber light, and the royal birthmark on his forearm glowed from within. Behind him, loyalists and villagers stormed the throne room, overwhelming Dravic's remaining guards. The usurper's face was a mask of hatred and fear. This changes nothing. I still rule here. In response, Alaric simply raised a hand. All around the room, every banner bearing Dravic's sigil burst into flames, while the original stone carvings of the royal wolf, long hidden beneath black paint, began to glow with a soft, inner light. The castle remembers its true king, Alaric stated simply, as does the kingdom. Dravic raised his sword, desperation in his eyes. Then come and take it from me, wolf blood. The throne room crackled with tension as Alaric and Dravic circled each other, blades ready. The twin moons remained in perfect alignment, their combined light streaming through the high windows. I have waited 18 years for this moment, Alaric said, his voice resonating with a newfound power. 18 years in exile, while you poisoned my father's kingdom. I built this kingdom, Dravic snarled. While you wandered the wilderness, I ruled. The people fear me. The nobles obey me. Fear is not loyalty. Obedience is not love. Alaric's amber eyes burned, the Alpha's power restored by the ritual, yet still settling into his soul. A true king serves his people, not himself. Their swords met with a thunderous clang, sparks flying as enchanted steel struck enchanted steel. Dravic wielded the blade stolen from Alaric's father, while Alaric fought with the sword he had carried through his exile. From her position near the throne, Lyra watched the battle as Fenra worked to break her chains. Every exchanged blow sent tremors through the floor, the very castle responding to the conflict between the false king and the true heir. "The ritual," she whispered to Fenra. "It isn't complete. His power isn't fully restored. The final step is the defeat of Dravik." The wolf's reply came as its teeth finally severed the last of its bonds. "Balance must be restored. What was taken by violence must be reclaimed by justice." Freed at last, Lyra rushed to release the other prisoners. Elder Tom gave her a fleeting, grateful embrace before his gaze returned to the dueling kings. "The usurper weakens," he observed, his voice a low rumble. "But Alaric's strength wanes as well." He was right. Both men were showing signs of utter exhaustion. A dark stain of blood was spreading across Alaric's sleeve where Dravik's blade had found its mark. The usurper himself was gasping for air, the unnatural power that had fueled his 18-year reign finally beginning to flicker and fail. The fighting around them had ceased. Loyalist and royal guard alike had lowered their weapons, forming a solemn circle around the two contenders. This was a battle that could only be decided between kings, as the old law demanded. "You never understood the true source of an alpha's power," Alaric said, deftly sidestepping a desperate lunge from Dravik. "It isn't born of fear or domination." "Then what is it born of?" Dravik sneered, pressing his attack. "Loyalty," Alaric answered, his voice ringing with conviction. "Compassion. Connection." With each word, he drove Dravik back. A strike for his land. A strike for his people. A strike for all who stood beside their king, not from fear, but from choice. His eyes found Lyra's across the great hall. In that instant, something arced between them. A current of raw energy, the final sealing of the bond forged in the temple ritual. Lyra felt power surge through her veins, the guardian's gift answering the Alpha's call. Without thinking, she raised her hand. White-blue energy streamed from her fingertips, spilling across the throne room floor in luminous patterns that mirrored the ancient symbols from the ancestral tome. "What is this sorcery?" Dravik demanded, stumbling back from the advancing light. "The kingdom remembers," Elder Tom intoned, his voice echoing with an unnatural resonance. "Stone and soil, river and forest, they all remember their true ruler." The marble beneath Dravik's feet began to crack. Ghostly roots erupted from the fissures, coiling around his ankles. He hacked at them with his sword, but for every one he severed, two more grew in its place. "This ends now," Alaric declared, his advance steady and relentless. With a roar of defiance, Dravik tore himself free and lunged forward in a final desperate charge. Alaric met the onslaught, their blades locking with a scream of steel. For a heart-stopping moment, they were frozen, face to face. The usurper's scarred features twisted with hatred, the true king's eyes blazing with resolve. Then Alaric spoke a single word in the old tongue, a command understood by every Alpha King since the dawn of the kingdom. The royal sword in Dravik's hand trembled, then wrenched itself from his grasp. It spun through the air, clattering to the floor at Alaric's feet. Disarmed and disbelieving, Dravik sank to his knees. The false crown tumbled from his head, the metal shriveling like autumn leaves as it touched the energized floor. "End it," the usurper demanded, his voice raw. "Kill me, as I should have killed you." Alaric lowered his own sword to Dravik's throat. The throne room fell silent, every soul holding their breath for the killing blow that would end 18 years of tyranny. Instead, Alaric stepped back. "Death would be a mercy you don't deserve, he said, his voice cold, and I will not stain my return with your blood. He turned toward the throne, where two crowns now shimmered into existence. One was the simple silver circlet of the Alpha King. Beside it lay a more delicate crown of silver, interwoven with living vines and studded with tiny blue flowers that matched those that had once bloomed from Lyra's blood. The bonded crowns, Elder Tom whispered in awe, not seen since the kingdom's founding, when the first Alpha ruled beside the first Guardian. Pengra, now in human form, approached, carrying both crowns on a deep blue cushion. It is time, my king. Alaric sheathed his sword and turned to Lyra. The kingdom calls to us both, he said, his voice softening. That innocent vow you made as a child, I release you from it. What happens next must be your choice, and yours alone. Lyra stepped forward, acutely aware of every eye in the room on the village healer who had discovered her heritage, her power, and her destiny in the span of a few short days. It isn't destiny, Alaric, she said softly. It is choice. She lifted the guardian's crown from the cushion and placed it on her own head. The living vines instantly responded, shifting to fit her perfectly as the small flowers bloomed with a brighter intensity. Then she took the Alpha's crown and approached him, by choice, not fate, by love, not duty. As she settled the crown upon his head, the light from the twin moons outside seemed to intensify, bathing them both in a silver splendor. Across the castle and throughout the realm, people stopped, feeling the shift in the very air, the land itself breathing a sigh of relief as balance was finally restored. Forgotten in the moment of coronation, Dravik lunged for a discarded dagger. But before he could take a single step, the floor beneath him gave way, the marble transforming into a living thicket. Roots and vines ensnared him completely, not to kill, but to contain, pulling him down, down into the embrace of the earth itself. The land renders its own judgment, Fenra observed, her form shimmering at the edge of the light. Alaric held out his hand to Lyra. As their fingers intertwined, the two crowns pulsed with a harmonious light, silver from his, white-blue from hers. The kingdom had its Alpha King once more, and at his side stood its guardian, neither stronger, but strongest together. She stopped, a powerful wave of pressure seizing her abdomen and stealing her breath. Marcus glanced at his watch. That's one, he said, his voice calm. Let's start timing them. He moved with a methodical grace, transforming a corner of the rustic cabin into a makeshift delivery room. Clean sheets were spread on the bed. Medical instruments, sparse as they were sterilized in a pot of boiling water. Every movement was efficient, devoid of panic or wasted energy. Sarah watched him through a haze of rising discomfort. You've really done this before, haven't you? Twice in Afghanistan, he replied without looking up. Once in South Sudan. He positioned several lanterns to give the best possible light. Not ideal conditions, he murmured, more to himself than to her. But they'll do. Another contraction hit, sharper and stronger than the first. Sarah sucked in a breath, focusing on the techniques from her birthing classes. Marcus noted the time. 12 minutes apart. Still early days. First babies like to take their time. He arranged pillows to support her back. Try to rest between them. Conserve your strength. What about the men outside? She asked, her voice tight. His expression hardened for a fraction of a second before becoming a professional mask once more. They are a secondary concern, This cabin has stood for 40 years. It's solid. The entrance is defensible. His clinical assessment was strangely reassuring. Sarah nodded, then gasped as another contraction began to build. 8 minutes, Marcus noted, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Moving faster than expected. He moved to the stove, returning with a steaming mug. Red raspberry leaf. It helps. Sarah took it gratefully. You just have this lying around? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It's good for a number of medicinal purposes. Though I'll admit, obstetric supplies weren't my top priority when I stocked this place. The next few hours blurred into a cycle of intensifying pain. Before Sarah's eyes, the gruff recluse vanished, replaced by a focused, competent medic. By nightfall, the contractions were crashing over her every 3 minutes. Sarah gripped the edge of the bed, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead. I don't think I can do this. You are doing it. Marcus's voice was a firm anchor in the storm of pain. Your body knows what to do, trust it. A sound from outside snapped his attention to the window. Dusk had fallen, and with it came the sound of movement in the undergrowth, too deliberate for any wild animal. They're back, Sarah whispered between gasps. Marcus moved silently to the window, peering out from the edge of the frame. One scout, he confirmed. He retrieved his rifle, placing it nearby but out of sight, then returned to her side as if there had been no interruption at all. Breathe through it. That's it. The contractions escalated again, now barely a minute apart. A cry tore from Sarah's throat, too powerful to contain. I need to push. He examined her again. Not yet. Almost. Breathe through the urge if you can. The noise outside stopped abruptly. Marcus went still, listening. They heard you. I can't. Be quiet, Sarah panted as the next peak hit. Don't try to be. He moved to position himself between the bed and the door, within reach of both her and the weapon. Let them hear. It might even work in our favor. How? She managed to ask. Few things are more terrifying than a woman in labor, Marcus said, the faint smile returning. Even hardened men tend to keep their distance. As if on cue, the footsteps outside retreated toward the tree line. Marcus nodded in grim satisfaction. See? Tactical advantage. Sarah might have laughed if another different kind of contraction hadn't seized her. An overwhelming, undeniable urge to push. Marcus, she gasped. It's time. He checked one last time, all traces of humor gone. You're right. 10 centimeters. On the next one, you push. Outside, the darkness was complete. The scout had retreated, but Marcus knew they hadn't gone far. Inside, a new life was fighting its way into the world. Two forces, creation and threat, converging on this tiny cabin in the middle of nowhere. Ready? Marcus asked, positioning himself to guide the baby's arrival. Sarah nodded, gathering every ounce of her strength as the next contraction began to swell. Push, he commanded softly. Bring your child into the world. The sound of shattering glass tore through the concentrated intensity of the room. Marcus whipped his head toward the back window, where a gloved hand was now reaching through a jagged hole, fumbling for the latch. Sarah, keep pushing, he ordered, his voice preternaturally calm, belying the speed of his movement as he lunged toward the intruder. With astonishing strength, Marcus launched himself from his stool, grabbing the intruder's extended arm and twisting it sharply. A cry of pain echoed from outside as Marcus slammed the arm against the window frame, forcing the fingers to release a hunting knife that clattered to the floorboards. Sarah screamed through another contraction, her focus torn between the demands of her body and the violent struggle at the window. I'm here, Marcus called to her, maintaining his grip on the intruder while his free hand reached for the rifle. Keep going. You're doing great. The intruder wrenched his arm free, disappearing from the broken window. Marcus quickly wedged a heavy metal toolbox into the opening, then returned to Sarah's side, rifle now laid across his lap. That was impressive, Sarah panted. Close quarters training, he said simply. He repositioned himself to assist with the berth, his eyes scanning every point of entry. Focus on pushing now. Muffled voices murmured outside, several of them. The man at the window hadn't been alone. How many? Sarah asked, gritting her teeth against the building pressure. 3, maybe 4. Marcus's voice remained a steady, unshakable calm. Don't worry about them. Hard not to, she ground out, bearing down with all her might. They're not getting in here, he stated, the certainty in his voice a shield. Not while I'm here. The baby's head began to crown. I can see her, Marcus announced, his professional detachment momentarily broken by a note of pure awe. One more big push, Sarah. One more.